Welcome to Mission Riverside, a brand new show for Riversiders. And guess what? This is our very first show.
Woo!
I'm Patrick Maloney. There's my co-host, Mr. Tim Brown, yes. And our very first guest, Erin Edwards, is
Hello.
here. Woo! This is so exciting. I mean, we've been really jazzed about the show. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, and we're just really happy to have you here and being our very first guest. And since I'm in Ward 1, also, my City 1, Ward 1 council member, so it's
Ward
so cool.
1 for the first episode.
Yeah, Ward 1 for the very first.
Oh,
I didn't even
that's
think
great.
of
I
that.
like that.
Perfect.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
we
so cool.
yeah.
And so the mission is basically we want to do interviews with friends of ours and people from Riverside that we find interesting, positive, cool, and special, and they do stuff in town. So that's what we're going to be doing. And if you want like debates and stuff like that, we're going to be doing that on other shows. But for right now, we're going to be doing this. Sometimes we'll be on a little camera like a phone. Sometimes we'll be doing live shows of music, but we're going to be talking to everybody and anybody in Riverside that we need to talk to, and people that we don't know and we're going to be new friends with. So it's exciting.
Mission Riverside.
It's literally mission for Riverside to do something great for Riverside.
That's our
and
mission.
It's a good time. And we want to give a special shout out to our old friend, Mr. Ralph Torres. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing this stuff. And he's still got his show. He's got a newsletter coming out. So please check that out and keep supporting it. And check out the archive. Because, my God, there's some amazing stuff on the archives.
Absolutely.
So at this point...
Thanks to Gary.
And big shout out to our friend Gary Payne, who's helping us with the show tonight. All right, we better start the show, Erin. First question. I want to ask you real quick. It's about your music with your child and your partner. How cool is it that you're playing with family? Like, it's one of those things, like, I used to play music with my grandma and my dad still once in a while. It's one of those magic things that you can only get once in a lifetime. So what's it feel like, and what do you guys play, and what's your favorite songs to play, and what's your instruments you play?
So I've been playing the piano since I was 5 years old.
Oh, nice.
And just recently have learned to be more spontaneous with piano playing, so I don't necessarily need written music.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually exclusively sit down with a book called Rise Up Singing. Do you know it?
I've seen that before, yes.
There are 2 volumes. We own them both and several copies of each one, so you can pass them around so people can sing and you can all be on the same page.
Nice.
So they're campfire songs
Mhm.
and divided into different sections. Like there's an America section. The new one even has a millennial section. Most of the songs I don't know, and that scares me. And ballad sections, play, lullabies, and so I'll play the piano. Liz plays the violin. She also
Beautiful.
sings. And our daughter plays the maracas, or we have a whole basket that sits on top of the piano of instruments. So we have...
We had that in our house, too.
Do you really?
The memories.
Tambourines,
yeah, right?
bongos, maracas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, in this house at my grandma, we'd have
The little
everything
wooden
right
thing
there.
you could go...
Yep.
Yep. So we actually, when we have friends over, we'll bring down the instrument basket, pass it around, people will take their instrument, and we'll just go through the book, pick songs, and take requests.
That's
It's
so
so much
cool.
fun.
That's great. Yep.
That's magic right there.
So
And that,
family.
that
That's
just
awesome.
that makes me happy. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And that's another thing, is one of these things we want to do on the show is to meet people in town, because I got to point something out that bums me out. Is whenever I'm at city council or we go out to these, recently was a mayor tent tour. Some people are very rude, and they say rude things to you, and I don't like it. And I don't ever see them doing that to men, so it bothers me when I see it happen to Erin or to Patricia. I'm like, come on, guys, give them...
It's flat out rude.
Yeah, during the mayoral debates, I'll never forget, one of the questions was, what color is your hair, to this one gentleman? And then the next question was, what's your opinion on abortion? You're like, whoa, those are 2 completely different things. Like, why would you... It's not fair. So I always think it's amazing how much grace under pressure you always have. You're always so sweet. You got like what's that English expression? A stiff upper lip. Like you're not going to take. You're always so nice, and you always still talk to them, and you smile, and you're friendly, and you're always still willing to talk to people and be there in front of people. And that's what I'm so amazed about. And it's got to be a tough gig.
Well, it is. And it's
I'm
also
sure it has its moments.
It's also the best job that I've ever had. And one of the things I learned early on is that when someone is complaining about something, that is a person who stands for something. And so I always try to think about that even if we disagree or if it's a hard issue, the person in front of me is someone who stands for something. And that's admirable. So how do we get to a place where we can talk about it and find solutions?
That's
Interesting.
I love that.
It's interesting because I often refer to that as the double-edged sword of life. You know, it cuts both ways. It can, and you just have to be able to examine and be careful how you wield that thing around sometimes. So,
Good point.
Now, I know that there's a lot of things going on in Riverside, and I don't want to say that Erin has the most exciting ward in town,
You
but
could say that.
yeah, she does. Let's be honest.
Pretty much.
But
I
big
mean,
shout out to the other wards. There are a lot of things, but when people come to Riverside, they normally stop in your ward. So they come down to the Mission Inn. They come to the Festival of Lights. There used to be the Orange Blossom Festival, which I wish would come back. That was
that
amazing.
thing was huge.
People come down to check out a lot of things, but we have a big thing coming really soon. So how exciting is be part of the Cheech opening?
I just feel so lucky to play this one tiny piece at the very end and have so much awe and respect for all the people who made this happen. They had this idea, what if we were able to bring this collection to Riverside? What if we could turn the old library into this museum? And here we are 2 months shy of seeing it open its doors.
And the tickets
That's
just went
amazing.
up. It was
It's a
crazy.
great example of a long-term collaborative event that has culminating in going to be a wonderful event and beyond.
Yeah, well, and as you're thinking about and beyond, let's just talk about the ripple effects
Yeah.
of the Cheech
Oh, yeah.
throughout the whole city and the whole region. People will come to see the Cheech and then they'll be inspired to stay, to visit our hotels, to visit our restaurants, to go to Fairmont Park, to go to Citrus State Park, and the rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
we're in the process now of talking about how do we make sure that everything around the city, that we're all amplifying each other, that we're putting our best foot forward,
Yeah.
that when that museum opens mid-June, we're all ready for what it brings and
That's
to,
right.
to welcome visitors from our city and beyond.
I have seen articles talking about the Cheech from around the world. So it's amazing to see because there's people around the world that are learning about it. And, even if two of them come, 2 at a time.
I think it's going to
Right.
rival the Mission Inn for a few years. I think people are going to be talking about the Cheech as much as they're going to be talking about the Mission Inn for the next 5 years. They're going to go, hey, why do we got to go check out Riverside? Well, the big two will be not just, Mission Inn, but now the Cheech. People want to come to this world-class museum that's got something special. And it's really cool. And as a huge Cheech and Chong fan, it's also neat to know that Cheech is going to live on for decades, hundreds of years because of his amazing art collection. And he's a gentleman. I've met him several times. I've even worked for him, so very nice guy. And I'm just so happy that Cheech is bringing his collection to town. It's something special.
Well, and he's so passionate, yes, about art, but also about Riverside. And
Yes.
to hear him talk about our city and to see the way I feel about our city reflected in the way someone else talks about our city, it's inspiring.
It is.
He had family that worked here. I think we've worked at the Mission Inn, so it's a small world. It's one of those things. And I love that Riverside, and I won't lie, 20 plus years ago, people didn't talk about Riverside as a nice place to come visit. They were like, oh, Riverside. And they would be snooty about it. And I'd be like, I'd be upset. I'd be like, wait a minute, I love my town. But they can't say that now because Riverside in the last 20 years has just grown to be a more welcoming, friendly place. Especially, I always love the art and innovation. But really, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, this is the place to be. And so to think of Cheech being here, that's the perfect response to going, yes, it's working. Cheech is here, so it's living up to the dream of being the art and innovation of Riverside. And I hope that we have more museums like that in the future.
Without a
And
doubt.
I want so much more, and it's just one of those things. I will hope that someday that we have like a Smithsonian style area in downtown. Where
Well, I
it's
think
like,
we
so
do
we're almost
I
there,
think
yeah.
you're getting there. Yeah, it started. I mean, the seeds are planted, I think. Yeah.
And go check out the art museum too. The art museum is amazing. So I just want to give a special shout out to the art museum because they're awesome and it's a nice museum as well. So if you need to check out a museum before Cheech opens, definitely check out the art museum.
Well, and the Bibbs Museum is
Oh, yeah.
is starting to gain momentum. I think they're having an event called an Afternoon in White Park that's
Nice.
happening, I believe, in May. So
Nice.
there's momentum everywhere when it comes to arts and innovation in the
Yeah.
city.
I love this town, and I know I'm saying way too many questions, so I'm gonna have to let my buddy Tim ask a couple questions because I feel like I'm so excited. I see Erin here. I see Tim. It is surreal sitting back in El Rancho Relaxo, my house, and doing interviews. It's been over 2 years, everybody. We have not done this.
It is
in 2
exciting,
years.
isn't it? It is
Yeah.
exciting, and it's very exciting to have you here.
Thank you.
You are at the heart of things going on in the city of Riverside. and as we talked a little bit off camera, some of the things near and dear to my heart involve homelessness and mental health services. The city of Riverside, over the last few years, the federal government, the state government has kicked down a lot of money for homeless services, emergency services, things like that. And I think this might be an opportunity to kind of go over again how the city spent some of that money, because we're talking a couple $1 million or more, right?
More. We
Yeah.
had $28 million
That's, yeah.
of CARES Act funding
Yep.
that we were able to allocate, but we didn't do it alone. When you ask how did the city spend it?
No,
One
it
of
was
the-
a group with the county, the city, and other organizations.
Well, but even before that, we did a survey out to
Mhm.
the residents to say we're living through unprecedented times.
Yeah.
We have this funding to be able to support the people, the organizations, the entities that are most impacted by COVID. Tell us what the impacts are to you, so we make sure we're spending it in the right way. And we actually we had some early ideas of where we thought the money might go, and there were some changes based on the feedback. And you can even go, it's a public document, you can see all the comments that people wrote in on the online form about how they were feeling the direct impacts. And
Yes.
so we were surprised, maybe we shouldn't have been, but we were really surprised to learn how food insecurity was a problem before the pandemic, and even more so during. And so we were able to put more resources to getting food to people, and of course supporting the work that we're doing with homelessness, getting funding to nonprofits
Yeah.
who were struggling, but also at the front lines. It was quite a long list.
I remember when the food security popped up as that response to that survey, and it was surprising. Everybody didn't realize. And do you think some of it has to do with people falling through the cracks that don't get services, and now all of a sudden they have an opportunity to? And also maybe, I totally lost my train of thought there, but
Well, what I've observed is, as I'm sure you did, that there was poverty in our region, in our city before COVID.
Mhm.
COVID has exacerbated it.
Yes.
And we're seeing people that were isolated and the impacts that had, at the same time as we're seeing people who are crowding into small spaces because they can't afford, as separate family entities, to find housing for their own. And
rent.
because rent is so high.
Obscene.
And what surprised me as Paloma, my assistant, and I were out at some of these food drives would be the number of people who came per car. And that would be one household, maybe two, but just to show how many people now are living together trying to make ends meet, and the ends don't meet.
Which brings me to a question about, there are a lot of non or for-profit organizations online that are advertising rentals and things like that. A large portion of them are just rife with fraud. Is there anything being looked at about that you're aware of? I mean, when people are advertising homes in the city for $500 a month, and it's a 3-bed, that's BS. But there are people who are still going to put down a little bit of money to maybe desperation, and then they end up losing that money because they got scammed.
Well, we always are directing people to the Fair Housing Council, and
Got it.
our office does get a fair number of people who call in who have housing concerns, and so we'll always say, you have to talk to Rose and her staff
Yeah,
at
sure.
the Fair Housing Council. But, I can't go anywhere without someone talking to me about the big need for housing.
Yeah.
And just as one example, I was in Bonominio Park this weekend and spoke to a woman with a young child who is losing her housing by no choice of their own by the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
And so it needs to find something quickly, it needs to find something that's affordable. Oh, and by the way, she has a parent who lives in our river bottom
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
and wants to find a way to bring both
Bring her
households
back, yeah,
together. And
So how much of this is actually housing versus affordable housing? Is the housing there, it's just not affordable?
I would say we need to address both.
Okay.
We need more housing to meet our population in the state, in the city. So one way that we can have more affordable housing is just to build more housing, so we have more of a housing stock. And we need to make sure that when we do that, that housing is affordable. Mm-hmm. So one policy that I've been working on is called an inclusionary housing policy, which would ensure that as we're building new housing, it includes a certain percentage that will be affordable. So we've been working really hard on rolling up our sleeves and hammering out what that policy looks like in a way that fits our city, so that we make sure that we are continuing to build, that projects still pencil for the developers, and that we have the affordable units for people who so desperately need them. And I would say one of the best pieces of working on this policy has been, we're not arguing that there's a problem and what the problem is.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure out the little details of how to make the policy a good one. Everyone will say, we need more affordable housing.
Oh, yeah. Now, this is something that's dear to your heart, because when you came in Illinois, you were doing this already. You were already helping with homeless and helping with people that needed it the most. And then when you moved to Riverside, it was, I gotta ask, was it a tougher gig in Chicago or Illinois or Riverside with the homeless situation?
Well, homelessness, it was a different time. So so it manifests differently. Also, Chicago's a very different climate. So,
I was just thinking about that, yeah, because I forget that it's very cold up there. And
so certainly you see people on the streets, but the weather is such that...
That's why my parents moved from Chicago in 1956.
Really?
Yeah.
And so the work I was doing in Chicago
Because of the weather.
was on the north side. Where did your parents live?
One on the north side, one on the south side.
Okay. So I was on the north side leading a network of soup kitchens, food pantries, and homeless shelters just on the north side of the city. And it was fascinating to me to have the privilege of working with this whole network to really get an understanding of what are the issues, what do people have access to, what is more challenging to access, and how working together this network can create more equitable access.
I heard stories when they first moved to Chicago from Missouri. Mom, my dad, my grandmother and dad lived in the Marshall Field townhouse.
Wow.
Back in the day, so.
on
A lot of stories about Chicago, where the story was when Elliot Ness was coming in the front door, Grandpa Harry was going out the back.
I have to ask, so is there any pizza place in Riverside as good as the pizza out there in Illinois, or should we just on that one?
Oh boy. I really love many of the small businesses making pizza in Riverside.
I know that was a loaded question. I'm sorry. people.
Chicago deep dish pizza. Every time I go back to Chicago, it's
Good
one of the
answer.
things.
No, my neighbor's from Chicago, and he's like, I can't find anything really great. He's like, I love Romano's. It's as good as, but he's like, I gotta go to Chicago once in a while. I'll give a special shout out to Gary. We love you at Romano's.
Indeed.
But and plus he's in Ward 1 down there at the Raincross Pub.
That's right.
Too
Big
funny.
question. So, what are some of the best things about Riverside that are different from Illinois, other than the weather, obviously? Or maybe it's worse because it is pretty hot out here.
Well, I joke because my partner and I moved. We were living in Canada right before we lived here because she had a Fulbright in Winnipeg. So I
Got it.
always say, and we came here because she got a job at UCR, that because of Liz, we've now lived in the coldest place and the hottest place that I can imagine.
I mean,
But
those are extremes.
That's funny. I kind of did that too. I
Extreme.
spent the first 2 years of my life in Trona, which is just near Death Valley,
oh,
and then we moved to Riverside. But my parents also had been in Chicago and then Riverside, and then had to go live 5 years in Trona for a while. Dad opened the first public bank there, but that's I
Wow.
digress. So
well, we joke that we're the only Prius in Southern California with a block heater plug. So people
Oh,
see
that's
this little
funny.
plug
Oh, wow.
coming out the front of our Prius, and they're like, "Is it fully electric?" You
Oh,
plug it in.
that's
We're like,
funny. You have
"No,
a
that
block
we had
heater.
to have this to move
Oh,
to
yeah.
Canada."
that's funny. I didn't
Oh,
see
wow.
those talk. I lived in Grand Junction, Colorado for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
So saw them out there. Yeah.
Yes, well, there's a Prius rolling around town where you can see one again.
That's funny.
But your question was what I love about Riverside, and it's the people. We've just found such an extraordinary community of people here, and having the opportunity to campaign and actually knock on everybody's door and meet people that I probably would not have met, or that it would have taken me so much longer to get to know. It was a real privilege. I mean, I've heard you say how important it is to actually go talk to your neighbor, to meet them,
Oh, yeah.
to meet them in person, to see things through their eyes. And there's nothing like standing on someone's doorstep and saying, what do you love about your city? What do you want to see change in your city? To right away start to have these real conversations. And there are conversations you never forget. I drive through the ward, and I still think about it. I stood on this person's porch. I talked to this person in
Memories,
their yard.
yeah.
It's
Imagine
really
having
amazing.
lived in this town for 50 years, all the memories on every corner
I can
and stuff.
only imagine.
It is amazing. I have my friend Ralph I've known since kindergarten.
Oh, really?
And we get together
Well,
quite frequently, and we have memories, wherever we go, wherever we see, on every corner, there's a memory, so.
Well, it's like everybody knows different neighborhoods. Like,
Yeah.
we live in a very nice neighborhood as well. And
Riverside, we call it a quilt. It's like a quilt, and it's neighborhoods that are kind of sewn together by all the people and the experiences. That's what holds the neighborhoods in that quilt together.
Well, like, if
I just made that up,
you're
and I
still on the
like that a lot,
heritage,
so.
I like that. That's good. Also, I thought of, like, the grandma making the quilt. You're down in Heritage Square still, right?
That's right, yes.
That is a nice part of town, and it's
I love that
cool.
part.
So it's like it's one of those things where if you're Heritage Square, the cowboy streets, or if you're in Wood Streets,
Sure.
there's so many cool neighborhoods in this town.
There
so
are.
I got to ask, what was your first impression when you first came to Riverside? What was like the first thing you thought of? Was it the cool? I got better not say anything. What was it?
So, I'm really glad you asked this question. When we moved to Riverside, coming from Canada, we had put all of our possessions on the truck coming down to Riverside. We had made one trip here prior, so we had a rented house in the Wood Streets on Rosewood. But because it was an international move, we learned that our things would arrive approximately 3 to 4 weeks after we would. So we had a house, but nothing to put
Cardboard
in it.
boxes.
Right,
Yeah.
nothing. So because Liz moved for the university put us up in a hotel. So my first impression of Riverside was waking up in the Mission Inn. That's where we stayed the first night.
Wow, nice.
And then we lived at Hyatt Place for the rest of the
Oh,
week.
wow.
Just right around the corner. So every time I pass it, I think, oh, I lived there.
Still, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I could think of worse places.
But imagine this, waking up in the Mission Inn for your first night ever in the city of Riverside. And I remember looking out at the orange tree that's right by Simple Simon's there, and the way it smelled,
Yeah.
which is so different from, I didn't grow up around orange blossoms, so that smell and the eucalyptus. I just remember standing at the window thinking, where am I?
It's a special part of Southern California. It's like
It really is
really
a special place, yeah. And staying there, I just recently stayed there. And it's the first time I've actually stayed there when it was a hotel. I had friends in high school in the late 70s that had apartments there.
I've heard that.
And I stayed there and slept on the floor a couple times. And then, of course, we traversed under it when it was fenced off, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I was going to say I
Share
can't.
more.
Yeah,
Not while the camera's rolling.
I can say.
Although I imagine statute of limitations is run
Yeah,
out
it's
on
been
that.
long enough. All of us snuck in the Mission Inn when it was closed off and looked around.
You could get in through
Yeah.
the where the annex is, on the other side, and
Or
you
the
could go
Sixth Street,
down
yeah.
and then follow the pipes, because the pipes were this big,
We're
but
not
the hole
supposed
they were in were this big, and we'd crawl on the pipes into these open rooms that were like basement subs that had like 100-year-old pianos stored in them and bar glasses and all these like artwork and stuff just stored there, and we would just go down there and goof around as kids and yell and scream and run from the security guards that couldn't figure out how to get down there.
One of those things I was thinking about just now was
1980 maybe.
when the fact that you grew up somewhere else, you came to Riverside. That helps because there's a lot of people who only lived in Riverside all their life, and I always think about one of the best things was I lived at the beach for about 5 years. I lived in a couple different places in SoCal, and it made me appreciate Riverside a lot more because even though those places might have had some really cool stuff, or like, oh, the beach, the weather's amazing, the community wasn't there. There wasn't a feeling of community and something special, and I always gravitated back to Riverside because it felt like the right place to be. And also, the only way I can explain this is it's like Disneyland. It's the middle of Disneyland, so like you can go to all these other places in California, and Riverside's the middle.
It's funny you say that because even
It's the
I spent
hub.
10 years in Grand Junction, Colorado, but when I would talk, I would slip and call this home still. And I just stopped trying to correct myself because I realized that this is where my heart is and this is home, even though I wasn't even actually born here and spent the first 2 years of my life in Trona, but after that, I've pretty much been here, and my parents were deeply enmeshed in Riverside, involved. My mom volunteered for every freaking thing possible, and so, yeah, Riverside is home.
That's how my daughter feels about me. My mom volunteers for every freaking
No, I
thing
get it.
possible.
I get it.
Oh man.
But it's so funny to be raising a Southern California daughter.
Isn't that
in
something
Riverside. I mean,
else?
she was born at Kaiser. She's almost born in the house on Heritage Square. We made it to the hospital with
You
6
made it.
minutes.
That's
to
wow.
spare.
I gotta say, I'd say every other time I go and try to walk up Mount Rubidoux, because I gotta admit, I can't make it all the way up anymore. My knee, I'm too big. I try to get up there, but I see you and Liz always up there. I'm like, they're always going up Mount Rubidoux. Or at least I'm going at the exact same time. I promise, I'm not stalking you guys, but it seems like, it's like, wow, there they are. Hi, how you doing? You never want to bug each other, but we always say hi, and it's just always neat to see you out there. And it's one of those jewels of Riverside is the Mount
Sure.
Rubidoux. A lot of people don't realize how special that is.
I remember driving up Mount Rubidoux.
I do too,
Driving
when I was a
up.
little kid, yeah. When my
No, I
grandma would
wasn't a
drive
little
up there, it was
kid.
scary.
No, I mean me driving up there. I was old enough. Yeah, we all.
I was a
we were-
passenger.
When I was 18 years old in 1980 or so, it was still you could still drive up Mount Rubidoux.
I
at
think
that
till about
time,
85
so,
you
yeah.
could, yeah.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was pretty intense too because if you were a crazy teenage kid, you were going faster than you should have, and if you met a car coming down the wrong way, because there was one road up, one road down, but not everybody understood that's how it worked, and yeah, it was a little tricky at times.
That sounds very scary.
And there was no railing or anything. So yeah, it was, you'd go straight off the road if you didn't pay attention, which I'm surprised more people didn't.
I'm always surprised that I believe it was the original Mission Inn or a mission or some type of a hotel was going to be built on the Mount Rubidoux. And it didn't happen, but I always think of people having to drive up that street or that road to get to the hotel. Or
Yeah,
motel.
initially there was.
There
wasn't
was supposed to, and I don't have all the information. We'd have to talk to Larry Burns about that one.
Oh, he would know.
He would know,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh my God,
There was
yeah.
actually an article in the Press Enterprise recently about that, I believe. So.
Yeah, if you need to know something about town, probably hit up
Larry.
Larry first, yeah.
But you were talking about walking. So we love walking on Mount Rubidoux, and we just love walking
Yeah.
in our neighborhoods. And actually, I was pouting for longer than I should have because I was campaigning, so too busy to sign up for a gym membership, and then I wasn't campaigning and too busy to sign up for a gym membership because I was learning this new job and I wanted to throw everything into it. And then finally, on March 10th of 2020, I said, I think I've hit my stride, and I'm ready now to sign up for a gym membership. And then 3 days later, everything blew up. So I never did sign up for that gym membership, so I pouted for several months afterward, and then I realized, you know what? I don't need a gym membership.
No, you don't.
The world is my gym,
Yep.
so I've just been going on these really long walks after meetings end at night and after Ramona's in bed, and it's been really lovely to
Save the money and just enjoy the experience and go out and do those things out there. Yep.
actually I have a 3-mile loop, and on that loop
Good.
I'll go look out over the river bottom, make sure there aren't any fires out there,
Yeah.
and then come back down, and it's just nice to know a neighborhood.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Riverside is so special. And on top of that, is there any events coming up that you're going to be a part of that you want to tell people about that maybe I haven't looked up and I'm like, did I put on anything? I'm like, I know she's got stuff coming up.
Oh wow! Now I feel put on the spot because
Oh,
there are
I'm
so
sorry.
many events.
I
Okay,
was-
what's coming up? Well, we're working on. So I was just talking about the river bottom. This isn't an event, but
Oh,
I'm
I
just
saw
going to
that.
talk
Yeah,
about this.
okay.
We're
Wonderful.
we're working on some policies to be able to enforce no camping in the river bottom
Wow.
because it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous for the people who are living in the river bottom.
A variety of
around
issues are revolving
the river
around
bottom.
that. So
Absolutely.
safety, health issues. It's a shame because it's not like, you can't kick them out. You have to find places for them, right? You know what I'm saying? To some degree.
And
And again, we'll talk about this. As you know, there are people that don't want help. So you got to deal with that too.
I'm just so proud to say that we've opened as a city 78 shelter beds
Yes.
in
Oh,
the
yes.
last year,
I know.
which is phenomenal. And we need to really look at this area that's hazardous for people to be living in and find ways to help people out of it. So we're looking at this new ordinance. We're talking about a wildlands public safety and engagement team that will help with the long-term maintenance of that area. So you asked me about events, and I went to a policy place, which is why
That's
people,
okay.
which is why people don't invite me to parties because I'm not very fun. Like, let's talk about policy.
There's a time and
No,
place. This is an important
That's
topic.
okay.
I kind of turned it a little bit myself.
No, it's okay. That's what it's about. Is we're here talking and getting to know each other, and it's going to go all over the place because look, we just did.
Well,
it
it's
right
important because right now, especially for people that live down that way, the river bottom's a very important topic for them. and what goes on down there and the policies relating to it and what they perceive isn't going on down there. Those are all very important issues, and I'm glad that you brought it up, and I'm glad that we're talking about
There
it.
was
Yeah,
a heavy
thank you.
there was a heavy thing that happened, I believe, during COVID, and it was a bunch of kids went down there and had a big party. Did you hear? I'm pretty sure you heard about this. Sadly, I don't know who or what happened, but somebody got stabbed and killed, and I mean, you don't want to have kids down there partying, and so to think about cleaning up, it makes sense so that one, kids can't go down there and party. Two, I know there's chop shops and stuff down there and that kind of craziness. And on top of it, you just don't want people to be in danger if it floods, which it doesn't happen a lot, but it still does happen. So
There's a lot worse down there,
and
believe me.
honestly, we don't want you don't want to have people living in the river bottom. You want people to feel good about themselves and feel worth something, so they don't feel like they need to live in a river bottom. They mean something and they matter. It's like it's one of those things that turn a blind eye on people. It's heartbreaking. But it's also very heavy. I understand people have families, they have kids, they got jobs, they can't do a lot. But it's always good if you have extra clothes, you got extra things, donate them to whatever organization that gets them out to the right places. Or just, hey, if you can do one day a year to help your community, that really does help make a difference.
Up.
Yeah, and
Anybody can piss and moan about things, but stepping up and taking action and trying to help do something in a positive way, that's different. Anybody can sit and
and it's a sad thing because there's no easy answer to a lot of this stuff, and loved ones are having hard times right now. Friends from 20 plus years or friends that have mental issues, they're having issues right now. But the fact is that we're trying to work on it, and that's the best solution. We're not as a city going, no, we're not dealing with this. We're legitimately talking about it, and that's the right step to go into. And now we're going to find solutions. That's one of those things I love about you. You always talk about solutions. You don't talk about things like I'm complaining about this. No, we're going to find a solution. And that's why you're a great council member. That's why we love having you here in the city. We're very lucky to have you here. And I know it gets stressful sometimes out there. All I can think of is those public comments, people. So online, if you put rude public comments, you're never going to get a reply. And if you go downtown and you're just yelling at somebody, are they going to really listen to you? But if you're positive once in a while, and then you say something negative, they'll listen. So,
And you're always so positive when you come down. I love it. Every time you come to the mic, I just smile. It's hard not to smile.
it was.
Patrick is of the philosophy of kill 'em with kindness.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that either.
If I get mad, then people know it's
I
legitimately
subscribe to that too, but there's a time and a place for everything. So I do. It leads me to a question, and I brought it up earlier. There are couple different types of homeless people. There are those people that are unfortunate, that are there and can't figure out a way to get out and just need some direction and a little help out. But there is a segment of population that don't want any help. How do your organizations deal with that?
Well, the way
It's not easy, I know that.
It's not easy.
No.
And the way that I've observed our homeless outreach teams approach it is thinking maybe someone doesn't want help right now.
No, I get that.
And there are a lot of reasons that someone might not want help right now. And in fact, when data was analyzed of the number of times it took building trust and approaching someone before they might accept some services, the number was 56. It took
Wow.
56
Yes.
interactions.
I know their motto is keep coming back.
Right.
It's keep coming back because eventually something's going to change.
Right. I mean, the people who are really struggling with homelessness, the most chronic cases are, I mean, everyone has a different story.
Yeah.
And they, I would imagine, have feel failed by a lot of people and a lot of systems. So we can't imagine.
Don't get me started.
Oh, please, start.
Well, technically, I'm homeless, as I mentioned to you. And so, yeah, I was just recently lamenting about how I feel because I have been labeled high functioning. And high functioning, when I hear people tell me that just tells me that I need to decompensate so they can help me, which is ridiculous. Because you don't want me to decompensate, believe me. I might not survive it. So I'm one that falls through the cracks sometimes because they don't know how to deal with me. And they're too busy dealing with people that are worse than I am. I get it.
So what do you find?
Worse in terms of behavior or, I'm clean. I live in a motel. I'm clean. I shower every day. But I don't have any place to live.
So see, now I'm going to ask questions. What do you find to be the most successful? What is working in the city's response?
Everybody's different. Everybody's needs are different. I can't speak for what everybody needs, but finding out what an individual's needs are and then trying to help them attain that's really the thing. But it's a slow process because you're doing it on an individual case-by-case basis. It's not a cookie cutter thing. My problem that I'm running into is that I'm on disability. I have a minimal amount of income and don't qualify to rent a place because they want 2 to 3 times the amount of monthly rent. I'm not making that. Even though I may have a trust fund, it's technically not mine. They don't count that. So
there are a lot of barriers. There are still so many barriers for people.
There are.
And I think your point about tailored services, meeting people where they are, is such a good one. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited here in the downtown about Project Legacy, which is on Brockton and University, and I'll back up and say we've been thinking about how do we make sure that we have resources for different segments of the population and for different needs. So Project Legacy would be serving an LGBTQ population and saying, well, we understand that for folks experiencing homelessness who identify as LGBTQ, there are certain barriers. Here's a place that's going to be welcoming and understanding and will be open for these folks and anyone who wants to live in this welcome and opening environment.
Is this at Brockton University? Are they deconstructing some buildings at that location right now?
They're renovating them. I think
Is that what they're doing? It looks like they're tearing the wood off of them.
They they ran into, I think, more of an issue than they thought they were going to, but they're actually
I've been
building
watching it as it
back
goes.
to the
I was like,
glory.
what are they doing?
It
was the Locke Memorial Buildings, right? And
Yes.
Recovery Innovations was also for a while on that corner.
It is going to be a phenomenal campus and
wonderful.
community space. So I think that's great. Another example is those 78 beds that we opened this year. We realized that there was an issue when people who were experiencing homelessness were released from the hospital. They're still experiencing homelessness and trying to heal from whatever landed them in the hospital.
Yeah.
What are we doing to support those folks? So 50 of the beds are recuperative care, so helping people heal.
Beautiful.
And then get into housing. And then the other 28 beds, it's recuperative care plus mental health care to surround people with services. And this is the first place in our region that we have that particular pairing of services. So I'm really proud. I think we're going in the right direction, but we still have a big gap.
What I didn't share about myself also, though, is that I still struggle with about 37 years of untreated PTSD. I only started getting treatment for my PTSD 10 years ago. And so that 37, 40 years really did it was like a weed that grew up within my personality, and I'm trying to weed that out and not take out parts of my personality, too.
And so when you share, and thank you for being brave enough to share.
I do stuff. I'm very involved with NAMI, and so I've learned to speak publicly about it, and it helps me and it helps others. So.
But how could we expect that when someone is struggling with 40 years of PTSD, that in one interaction, everything would be just fine?
I'm very honest and say that especially in my high school years, when counselors and people would try to come to me for help, I shunned them. And that people ask, how can you help someone if they don't want to be helped? You really can't. But like the homeless, you have to keep coming back. And for a while, I was just on my own, floating, doing my own thing, and it wasn't until years later. But
well, and I think what we've seen, and I feel that the pitch has intensified in COVID. A lot of times when people come to me, they've been struggling with something for a really long time, be it mental health concerns or trash pickup recently,
sure.
right? I'm not the first person that they come to, so they've been struggling with whatever the issue is for a while, and so once they come to me, they're really upset about it.
A saying I actually repeat on KCAL when I'm on, and it's be kind to others, for everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about.
That's right.
And I repeat that frequently. So.
And that's another thing is, and when Tim says this, I think about people sometimes shun other people because they have issues. They don't want to hang out. They don't want to hear about it. They don't have time for it. But that's one of those things that maybe we should, as try to be a little bit more open to our friends or to people we don't know and learn about where they're coming from so we can learn to help. And That's why I love being around Tim. That's why I love being around my friends that are, I don't want people to be like me, I want to be completely different. And that way I have a better life, because I get to be with people that are not like me and show me something that's different.
He likes being around effed up people. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
No, if I forgot what I was going to add there.
that's okay. The best thing is that when your friends are struggling, to stay there and be able to help them, or for friends that are maybe, like, I always think of when I see a homeless person. Recently, I had a gentleman across the street here, and all my years I've never seen anybody shooting up drugs in front of my house. And I got really angry, and then immediately I thought, no, this is somebody's father, it's somebody's son. They're struggling. I feel for them, and I realized that the 21-year-old me isn't there. It's 42-year-old me. I've learned a lot, and so when people do dumb things, you can learn and get better. It's even with the LGBTQ community. When I was a kid, I didn't want to go to the menagerie. I thought, no, I'm not going in there. I'm too machismo. I'm not going in there.
Really?
And I was wrong. And I finally went in there. I had the best time. I met some of my best friends, and I was open to a world that I didn't know. And it was very welcoming, friendly, and they had the best 80s music, flat out. I was like, wait a minute. They're playing all my favorite 80s songs, and I can dance. And surprisingly, the girls were a lot friendlier, because you're not like some dude that they don't think you're creepy all the time. You know,
I have a friend who was a bouncer there in the 80s. We used to go hang out with him there.
Same with me. One of my best friends.
6'7".
My good friend, Mr. Potter, he used to be the bouncer there, and it was like, that was the reason. He said, Pat, you need to stop with that BS attitude.
Sure,
and
sure.
come on in here and meet some new friends. And he was 100% right.
But isn't it amazing that we can all grow and change?
Yes.
Every single one of us is capable of it, and that's what I love about my job, is trying to see where is it that we can grow, how is it that we can change to meet all these needs, and we can't always do it tomorrow. So even when you come to me and it's an issue that's been long standing, I might not be able to fix it right away, which I know is a real concern. I would love to take the magic wand that
Yeah, it would be
they
nice
never
on a
gave me
snap.
when I started in office, by the way.
What?
But I love to take that magic wand and just say, there, we fixed it. But it takes a lot of work, but I think we're all capable of growth and change and doing something better tomorrow than we did it today. So
Which
hope for
brings
that.
me to the question: do you think patients have been have suffered as a result of the pandemic?
I think so. I'm also a very impatient person.
I'm just asking. I have my impatience too, but I've noticed it more on the roadways and other things than ever before.
Well, I have certainly noticed that civil discourse is a skill.
That too.
It's a skill that we all maybe need to take a deep breath and remember. And that has really taken a hit in COVID. And I hope we can get back to a place where we
Scorched
remember,
earth helps nobody.
where you remember, well, just talk to your neighbor. Just talk to them. But to your question about patience, I also found government moves really slowly. Really slowly, and it's painful. But sometimes it moves slowly for a reason, because we need to make sure we get it right. But I also joke that having governed only 3 months not in COVID, and the rest of my time in office has been in COVID,
Interesting.
I'm kind of dangerous now, because I have seen how fast government can move.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
have seen how quickly we can respond to urgent needs, how we can pivot. And so no one can tell me anymore that something is impossible. I just don't believe it. Look what we've all just seen.
Here, here.
And I think it's about dreaming big. And that's what
Yes.
it's about. Like, literally, dream big and try to, make your world better.
You can always
you know?
trim it down if you need to, but yes, go big and
I'm just so happy to have you here. I'm excited.
Thanks for having me.
I want to say, everybody, sorry if we're a little rusty with the questions and stuff. She's not, because she's amazing. She's been dealing with people for 2+ years during COVID. But me and Tim, we're a little rusty. But
been a nice
it's,
conversation.
It's so nice. And I want to keep you here longer, but I know we're at our time, and you got other things to do. Because
I have one quick last final question.
okay, well, let's do one more.
Anything big for you on the near horizon?
Well, we talked about the work happening in the river bottom. Since we talked a lot about homelessness, I've been working on a 5-year plan to reduce homelessness in the city. And so we're finishing our 3rd of 3 community meetings, the last of which is tonight. And then it'll come before the Housing and Homelessness Committee in May and City Council in June. So I think it's so important to get that plan right, so we know that what we're doing is working, So if it isn't, we stop it. And if it is, we put
Yeah,
more
yeah.
resources there.
Is there a website or anywhere people can go read what you're talking about right now?
Well, certainly on our social media, you can see more about the 6 pillars that we've conceptually included in this
What's
plan.
that called? Your social media? Tell them.
Oh yeah,
I may know. We may know, but they might not.
and I got to put it in there. I'll try to make sure to
Yeah,
edit it
we
in.
will. But go ahead.
So at CM Edwards is the handle to
There we
follow.
go.
And
Woohoo.
we'll really encourage you to follow along so that we can be sharing with you
Absolutely.
all the work as it's happening in real time. And I also have to give a shout out to Paloma, my assistant,
Oh
who
yes,
is
special.
doing such amazing work.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this and scheduling
Thanks for
this.
working with us very much.
And thank you for putting up with me.
We're a team of 2, and
You guys do a great
Paloma's
job.
the front lines in the office, and certainly couldn't do it without her.
We were just at an art meeting together just recently. It was fun to just hang out and talk for an hour. So, you know what? I'm just so excited. Once again, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on the
you.
show.
Thank you.
And I almost forgot everybody. Got to remind everybody, don't forget about Spike and Mike Sick and Twisted
Yes.
Festival Animation returning to the Fox Performing Arts Center May 28th. It's one of my favorite things on the planet,
Gonna be
so
a
don't
hoot.
miss out on that. I hope to see you there. And I
Thank
hope
you.
to see all the people watching there. That's going to be a big deal. And then make sure to check out the open mics, next couple ones at MTL. So let's make sure they're special, these next 2 ones. All right,
Please.
guys? Thank you so much for watching. And big shout out to Gary. Thank you so much, Erin, for being here. Thanks to my
Thank
co-host,
you.
Mr. Tim Brown.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'm Patrick Maloney. Hope to see you at the next one and see you on the next Mission Riverside.
Mission Riverside.
Woo!
See ya.